Good afternoon and welcome. My name is McKinney Silver, and I am one of two behavioral health therapists at Renton Technical College. My counterpart, Sarah Hoagland, is actually here with us today. Thank you for joining us, Sarah. And thank you everybody for attending the grief and healing session during the first annual Mental Health Awareness Week. One of the things that Sarah and I try and do with the behavioral health team is provide spaces to destigmatize things people believe should be experienced secretly or quietly. One of these subjects is grief. Sometimes presentations are lectures or webinar style, and others are storytelling. And our library coordinator, Emily, has been so gracious as to offer to provide a presentation using her personal experience to talk about how she processes her grief, and we are so grateful. I also want to make sure that if you are attending or watching this as a recording, if you are experiencing grief or loss, that you have access to resources. So let me show you our community resources page. So there is a section on grief and loss and also suicide prevention. If you are a current student wanting to process grief, loss, or anything at all, you can reach out to us on our webpage at rtc.edu/behavioral-health or email us at behavioralhealth@rtc.edu. Emily, I will now turn this session over to you. Thank you so much again for offering to speak about your experience of loss and healing. And I've just granted access for you to share your screen.
Thank you so much, McKinney. And can everyone see the slideshow?
Not just yet.
Not yet.
Everyone see the slideshow?
Yes.
Perfect. What I'm going to present to you today is the raw topic of death. Yes, the D word, grief and our mental health.
Sorry, Emily.
Yeah.
You didn't hit from beginning just yet.
Oh, sorry.
You're good.
Good afternoon. What I'm going to present to you today is the raw topic of death. Yes, the D word, grief and our mental health. This topic and what I present may be a trigger to you. It may bring tears to your eyes, and I hope maybe a chuckle or two. Whatever it is, take care of you, because I will have my box of Kleenexes right beside me. By a show of hands, how many of you have experienced grief in some way? Either through the death of a parent, a sibling, a pet, a significant other, or divorce. I have experienced the death of a parent, a divorce, which does not even come close to the loss of a significant other, the death of a pet, and the death of my significant other. Each experience changed my life. They happened in that order, but years apart. You'll be introduced to all three of them, but the one you will get to know the most is my significant other, my grief of losing him. How losing a significant other versus a parent, a sibling, or a pet affects our mental health, and being a widow and how my life has changed forever, signs, talking about our loved ones, dating, online and printed sources, and Facebook groups. But most importantly, asking for help when the days get dark or even dusk. Does everyone have their box of tissues? I have mine. Why is it loving, wonderful woman who, along with my dad, raised 3 children. Why is it? My mom, Sandy, was a loving, giving, wonderful woman who, along with my dad, raised 3 children. I loved my mom with all my heart, but as the years have gone by, her voice has faded in my thoughts. But her love continues inside my heart. It was Christmas time, 1989. My mom was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. What the? At 50 years old, with 1 child, 1 adult child, 1 in college, and 1 in high school, she was going to be fighting an uphill battle with the love and support of family, friends, and of course, her children. On January 11th, 1992, 6 months before my high school graduation, at the young age of 52, with family around her, she took her last breath. Her soul leaving her body, she was getting cold as I laid next to her. But she looked so peaceful. A few days later, we laid her to rest, laying in a coffin for all of eternity. After her funeral and reception, every day was a blur. I was angry. I cried myself to sleep at times. So many emotions. Frustrated that my mom wasn't going to be there for my high school graduation. She would never see me get married, well, in person, like she was at my brother's and sister's wedding. Never meet any grandchildren, nothing. She would never be able to experience life after the age of 52. But death has no age. It has no boundaries. It has no rules. It leaves you scarred, sad, angry, questioning your life, mental breakdowns, thoughts of suicide, and for some, financial ruins. And grief has no rules either. The two go hand in hand. The only difference is death is the end of a life. Your heart no longer beats, your brain no longer telling your body what to do, no speech. Everything is dead. Now that you have met my mom, we are going to make a quick jump to my divorce. Just like death, there is grief to having a divorce. You are no longer with that person, the one that you planned on getting old with, the one that you planned your whole life around, and all that great jazz. But the difference of losing a significant other to death than a divorce is that person may come back into your life. When you lose your significant other to death, they aren't coming back in person. You only have their clothes, the pictures, their cell phones. And as a matter of fact and opinion, I'd rather go through 100 divorces than the death of my significant other. It's time to say goodbye to my divorce and talk about my dog, Abby. My Abby was mama's girl. I raised her from the time she was 8 weeks old till the day we had to put her down at age 8 due to osteosarcoma or bone cancer on her skull. She was my first dog, my first chocolate lab, my fur child, everything. She kept me going through the divorce, and her unconditional love reminded me that there is still happiness in the world. And maybe that happiness and the unconditional love that she gave would help me realize that there might be a man out there who would take me for me. However, it wasn't all me that they had to accept. They had to accept Abby too. Within a few months of my divorce being finalized, I met my significant other, and he accepted me and Abby. We're happy. But as you will soon find out, there were bumps in the road that would change the course of my life forever. You're probably wondering why she is talking about her mom, her divorce, and her dog. All these moments account towards grief and how it can affect our mental health. But the number one thing that has affected my life the most is the loss of my significant other, and why that effect is so much stronger than the loss of a parent, a divorce, and the loss of a pet. Now that you have met my mom, Sandy, my dog, Abby, let me introduce you to Wayne, my significant other, my fiance, my soon-to-be husband, the man who accepted me for me and loved my Abby girl. Wayne and I met in the bar at Red Robin in Puyallup. He was looking at a photography magazine, thinking that he was cute. I tried making small talk and asking him about cameras, but he was kind of shy, not saying too much. The following week, he was back in at Red Robin, once again, sitting in the bar at the rail. I walk in and I see him, the same cute guy that I tried talking to the week before, reading the photography magazine, but this time he was reading Guns and Ammo. I soon found out he had been in the military. I told him that I would like to learn how to shoot someday. After many questions from me, he finally starts talking to me, but then he leaves. I realize that he is a regular, just like me. After many run-ins at Red Robin, I asked him if he would like to do something together sometime. On his 40th birthday, August 29th, 2006, we started dating. Soon after, he told me that he suffered from grand mal. What? I asked. Seizures, he said. He then told me that if I wanted to leave, I was more than welcome to. If he left the room, he was going to seizure. He never wanted me to see him go through the seizures, but I experienced my first one with him right before Christmas. OMG, I was scared. Not for me, but for him and the toll it took on his body. Those seizures, I started calling them the bump in the road. They slowed him down for a day or so, and then he was back to his normal self. As time went on, those seizures would take more and more from him. He always told me that he would not live for very long. We tried not to discuss it because basically, I didn't want to admit that he may not live to old age. There were times that he brought up death and him not living long. I asked him what he wanted. Do you want to be buried or be cremated? I asked. He told me he wanted to be cremated. It was the start of a discussion that I didn't want to have, but he was okay with it. That is when I realized that we all die sooner or later, and someday death will take him. But we had that discussion about death that most of Western civilization does not want to discuss. It's almost a taboo to talk about death. The brief discussion, even though it felt like a taboo, talking about his death and what he wanted was what I would need in the future. Our relationship thrived, and we decided that we should get married. He could no longer work as a commercial sprinkler fitter due to the seizures. His medications were well past $400 a month. In December of 2015, we got engaged. I was excited, even though I didn't want to get married again. But with the seizures happening every other month and his medications getting more expensive, we decided to bite the bullet and get married. I didn't need a piece of paper to show my love for this man. We were together for almost 9 years. Unfortunately, the insurance company needed the verification of us getting married. We decided that I would wear my previous engagement/wedding ring from my first marriage. He knew how much I loved the ring and not the man, my ex-husband, who gave it to me years before. When I put the ring on after 8 years of not wearing it, it didn't fit. I took it to our local jewelry store, who I knew the owners, and they sent it off to have a small piece put in. A new beginning. A new beginning to a man that I loved. Well, I still do. and we decided to order his ring online through Amazon. We were going to tie the knot at one of our favorite restaurants with a few friends and family right after the first of the year. Wayne and I decided to tie the knot on January 16th, but the universe had other plans, as I would soon find out. We had a wonderful weekend prior to the 16th, having pizza and beer at Bumpy's, our local little bar. We spent the time together laughing and talking with our friends, talking with the bartenders. It was a great Sunday evening, not knowing that would be the last time all of us were together at Bumpy's. The next morning when I woke up, I did not know that my life was going to change forever. Wayne always got up before I did. He would let me sleep till the very last minute. He would have my bowl of cereal and juice all ready, but that Monday morning he did not. He was going to seizure. Another bump in the road. I got ready for work knowing that he was going to seizure, and I would check on him throughout the day. I came home about 2:15 that day. He had a seizure, but he was sitting on the couch when I got home. I sat down next to him and asked him if he was okay and how he was doing. He was still groggy, but coherent. I told him that I was going to go back to work and that I would be home in a couple of hours. When I left, there was an Amazon box sitting on the doorstep. I went back inside and told him that his ring arrived. It arrived early. It wasn't supposed to arrive until January 12th. I told him that we would open the box when I got home and see his ring. I gave him a kiss goodbye and told him that I loved him, and he said to me, "You're going back to work?" He questioned me leaving, almost like I wasn't supposed to go. That comment would soon haunt me, questioning my leaving to go back to work, the survivor's guilt. Was that a clue that something was going to happen? I'll never know. It's a question that rolls around in my head time and time again. At 5:20 that day, I arrived home. Our two girls greeted me. After losing Abby, we happily brought home two chocolate labs, Tempe and Kiri. But Wayne wasn't sitting on the couch like he was when I left to go back to work. I looked around the corner of a chair and he had another seizure, this time falling into our wooden TV stand. Luckily, it didn't have any glass. It was one that we got at IKEA since we had a flat screen TV. I ran to him. He was still warm. I yelled for him to wake up as I looked for my cell phone. I couldn't find it. While my brain was trying to comprehend what was going on, I forgot that I had set it on the kitchen counter. I got his body pulled out and turned him over. It was like dead weight, reminding me of all the times I would catch him during a seizure, his lifeless body against mine as I lowered the two of us to the ground. I started CPR and stopped long enough to get my cell phone off the counter. I was yelling at him to wake up. I was yelling for help, hoping a neighbor would hear me while dialing 911. I had them on speakerphone while I'm doing compressions and yelling at them to hurry up and yelling at Wayne to wake up, that we needed him. I was trying my best, but nothing was working. I knew he was gone. I knew he was dead. The paramedics arrived. They cut his Puyallup Fair sweatshirt open so they could attach the shock pads to his chest, hoping his heart would start beating again. I'm sitting on the kitchen chair watching the paramedics shock him, watching for any signs of life. I'm staring in disbelief that the love of my life was dead. There was nothing more that could be done. The paramedics looked at me and said, "Ma'am, we are sorry, but there is nothing more we can do. Your husband is deceased. The paramedics called the hospital and declared his time of death 6:15 p.m. Monday, January 11th, 2016. The paramedics asked if there are family or friends that they could call. I told them yes. I started dialing our best friends, the paramedics telling them that they needed to come to my house and that Wayne was deceased. They soon arrived and called my brother, my aunt, and Wayne's brother. I couldn't talk. I was speechless. I was in shock. The paramedics did all the talking. As they were talking, I stood up, shaking and crying. I walked over to Wayne and laid on the floor next to him for the last time. He looked so peaceful. My world turned upside down. He was dead. My house began to fill up with a couple of friends, family, the police. It wasn't until 11 p.m. that the coroner came, placed his body in the body bag, and placed him in the van. His best friend, who was in the Army with him, saluted him as he left the house. I couldn't watch him go and went to the side of the house. I could hear the rustling of the body bag, even though I was plugging my ears. He was placed in the van and taken away. I was in shock, disbelief, so many emotions running through my head. The last time I would ever have or hold him again. The next time I would see him, he would be in a different plastic bag, his body cremated. That week was a blur, so much to do. Answering phone calls, deciding on what to do for his memorial, everything. I had our dogs to worry about. Luckily, a friend took them. I felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest, the weight of him being gone, answering questions about him being an organ donor. I hadn't even seen my house, but I knew I would have to go home at some point. My life without his physical being was just beginning. The grief was raw at the beginning. Grief is like the ocean. The waves were huge and so close together. I felt like one wave of emotions would hit and then I'd be okay. Then bam, another set would hit. When is this going to stop, or will it ever? Sometimes the waves would just hit. At the grocery store, work, in the car, at home, at night, or in the morning. There wasn't a set time of when the wave or waves would hit so that I could not prepare myself. As the grief was still strong, and in March of 2016, I went to Camp Widow in Tampa, Florida. It is a convention for widows and widowers that was started by a widow who lost her husband in a cycling accident. There were so many people there. There were attendees who were fresh like me to those 5 to 10 plus years out. At the time, 5 to 10 years seemed like an eternity, but now here I am, 5 years out. 5 years from the time his body left my house. Camp Widow was the best thing that ever happened. It gave me a chance to meet others who had lost their significant others, both my age and older. Still, even at camp, the grief was raw, but I had received so much support just for being there. The week went by fast. It was time to board the plane home, and even then, I was trying to keep my emotions at bay. I had my Kleenexes tucked in my backpack because I wasn't sure when that next wave would hit. To this day, I still haven't figured out how one living human being can produce so many tears and goo from crying. I get home from the airport and I walk into my house and yell for Wayne that I'm home. Bam, the crying starts again. Then the yelling at him why he had to die while sitting on the floor, all curled up with his bag of ashes that are tucked inside a cardboard box inside a velvet bag. I soon find out that the best place to cry is in the shower. The tears and goo go down the drain, and the crying headache is so much less. No matter what I did, I was on an emotional roller coaster, and the ride wasn't stopping. The waves were still hitting just as hard, but not as close together and not as big. Until I had a breakdown. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't do anything, just gripping the edge of the counter, waiting for it to subside. It was scary. Over time, the waves started to get smaller and had more space between each one. Some of us widows and widowers face the waves of the ocean riding each one. But then this new thing hits. It's the grief monster. Just like the ocean and waves, the grief monster pops in when it wants. Now the waves are getting smaller and not as close together. The grief monster still comes, but not as often, sometimes riding the wave and sometimes in between one wave and the next. And then as everything starts to pan out and things aren't as close together, you have the meltdowns. Even those hit with no announcement. They just come. Being a widow is a challenge. I've lost friends, but I have also gained new friends. I have my widow brothers and sisters. We are a family. We are there for each other, and for some more than their own families. We get it. It is a new life that we live. As I have gone down this road, the one thing that I love the most and know that He is still with me and will always be with me are part of my life are signs. Signs from Him. Everything from a song coming on the radio, knives that were sitting on the kitchen counter are now on the floor with the tip of the knife pointing towards His picture on the mantle. And yes, that happened. Feathers just showing up when there shouldn't be any feathers. Heart-shaped rocks when there wasn't one before. Sometimes you don't receive a sign for months and months, and then bam, you receive one. Many people are not open to signs for various reasons, but I have chosen to receive them from Him with love and happiness, and I always thank Him for His gift. As time goes on, I have been asked, why do you still talk about Him? Why do you post things about Him on Facebook? He's dead. Yes, He is dead. I am reminded of that every day. Every time I see His picture on the mantle, every time I see His box of ashes sitting on the piano next to Abby, I am reminded that for the last 5 years, every time I leave the house and every night I go to bed, I always tell Him either goodbye and I love you, or good night and I love you. I talk about Him. Other widows and widowers talk about their significant others because we choose to. We want to. We love them and we move forward with them in our lives. They will always have a piece of our hearts. As I move forward, I have joined the online dating world. OMG. What a weird, awkward experience. It's not the high school days when you saw each other at school. No. Now you're meeting people who have kids, ex-wives, or husbands, extra everything, shall we say, just baggage in general. You're trying to find time to meet while both of you are working. And don't even get me started with Facebook. However, I will throw in a few, just so you know what that's like. I have not changed my status on Facebook, but I have received friend requests from military personnel from various foreign militaries, men from other countries, etc. It can be truly daunting. The biggest issue is that most of the time they ask you for money. Many times, widows especially give in. It's a way for us to be needed and wanted again. Sometimes dating can be quite daunting, while other times it can be quite humorous. And then there's the ghosting. Yep, plain and simple. They don't show up for the date, they don't call. Nothing. Sometimes it hurts, but then at the same time, they probably aren't worth it. But it's still. Uh, Sometimes it hurts, but then at the same time, they probably aren't worth it. But it still hurts. As widows and widowers, we start to wonder, am I worth it? Will I ever find happiness and love again? It's a challenging question that each of my brothers and sisters face, and sometimes a widow and a widower will find happiness together. As widows and widowers, not only do we face the challenges of our new lives, dating, the first of everything, we have our health and mental health that we also must deal with on a regular basis. The death of our significant others and grief brings on many health and mental health issues for us. We face problems with sleep, fatigue, a compromised immune system, inflammation of our hands and feet, anxiety, the increased release of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, digestion, aches and pains, increased heart rate, broken heart syndrome, a risk of having a heart attack, and widow brain. Basically, our memory is shot. This is especially true at the very beginning, but also months before and after they died, also known as the anniversary. Since losing Wayne, I've experienced sleep issues. I'm lucky to sleep through the night. I'm constantly exhausted, constantly stressed. Every year on the day he died, I cannot be home. That night relives itself through my head. The survival guilt of going back to work that day, the widow brain, the grief has taken its toll on me. About 2 years after losing Wayne, and at 3 o'clock in the morning on the Friday before Father's Day, I took an Uber to the ER because I was having trouble breathing when I laid down. I got to the ER and my blood pressure was 180 over 110. I had fluid around my lungs. Sitting in the ER patient room at the hospital and all alone, the ER doctor told me I had congestive heart failure. I'm lying there thinking, is this a death sentence? Do I get to see Wayne? I was okay with it. That weekend was a weekend of test after test. They soon found out that I had an irregular heartbeat, along with a dead spot on my heart. And to this day, my cardiologist cannot figure out why, other than the stress of being a widow. If I had not gone in when I did, the cardiologist on call that weekend would have thought I would have been dead by Tuesday. My ashes together with Wayne's and Abby's, I thought. As time continues to go on, the waves get smaller, the meltdowns are less, but the stress, the lack of sleep, and in general, being a widow has taken its toll. But as time moves forward, I've come to help other widows and widowers, and along with 2 other widowers, we started PNW Widows Meetup Group, or also known as the Pacific Northwest Widows Meetup Group. We are 420 members strong, and as time goes on, unfortunately, a new member is added into our family. Somehow we survive. We make it through the sleepless nights, the anxiety, the health issues, the dark days, the mornings we don't want to get up because many of us have children or pets to take care of, or think that being with our deceased significant others would be so much better. When everyone else leaves us a few months after the funerals or memorials, widows and widowers stick together because We get it. And we are a family. As a final note, if you have a significant other or like someone who can make you happy, let them know. Life is short. Take that advice from a widow who was 42 when she lost her love of her life. Thank you for attending today's session on grief and mental health, but most of all, thank you for listening. I hope that if you or anyone you know needs someone to talk to regarding grief, depression, or stress, that you contact Sarah Hoagland and McKinney Severall, or contact your local mental health services. Or if you have suicidal thoughts, please contact the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-8255. Thank you again for attending.
Oh my goodness, Emily, thank you so much for sharing your story. We are so grateful